this one should be the sound. เดี๋ยวครับ Yes, one.ได้
ล่าสุดอะมันจะมีใหญ่เล็กอะเสียบไม่ได้ก็หลุดไม่เข้ามีตรงกลางไม่ใช่โฟกัสก็ให้ได้ดิมองถึงที่ไหนยังนี่เนี่ยจดนี้แล้วกดอัดนะครับแล้วกดมันขึ้นสีแดงแล้วตัวไหนนี่มาเอาสูงออกน้ำมันใสเราไม่เย็นแล้วตามเข้าไปดูตอนนี้นะโอเคพอแล้วที่เดียวกันตรงนี้ยังไง
ใกล้ๆกันนะสายถึงไหม HDMI น่าถึงไหม
น่าจะตัวนี้ก่อน
น่าจะถึงเลย
แต่ว่าจะมีกล้องนี้อัดไว้ตัวหนึ่งเดี๋ยวคือสถานการณ์การอาจารย์บอกที่ผมพูดแล้วผมอยากให้เด็กที่ว่าเขาเป็นแบบแล้วเดี๋ยวไม่พอได้แล้วครับตั้งไม่เกิน10 นาที
เราประแจกน่าจะผมมีตรงนี้สำรองอยู่ไม่เป็นไรผมถ่ายทอดสำรองอยู่
แต่ว่าเวลาขนของเข้ามามันลำบากจะเป็นกล้องไว้แคมตัวนี้ก่อนเดี๋ยวผม
ขอแตะ
เขาหลอกลองแก
เทส1 2 3 4
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. I'm the director of Innovation and we're here. So welcome everyone to our video and also to our hackathon event today.
watching this and I'm really glad to see you all.
Right, and also we would like to thank you our sponsors. Right, this event involved together with NIA, what we call the National Innovation Agency, right, and also
the Royal Academy of Engineering.
Right, also it, which is actually an internal agency to support this program. So thank you very much to all of our sponsors. Without you, we cannot have the events and also the guests.
I just want to thank our sponsors as well, and our guest honor, and Wise team, and Hackathon, and everyone here, and of course, Royal Academy of Engineering and National Innovation Agency in Thailand. They gave us this chance to be here today together to change, to innovate, and maybe make the world a better place to be.
จะพูดไทยได้นะครับเก่งแค่มีหลายท่านกระวนนะจะพูดภาษาอังกฤษนะภาษาไทยได้นะครับภาษาอังกฤษก็ดีนะครับและทุกภาษานะครับก็เป็นว่าขอบคุณมากนะครับทุกท่านที่มาครับก็เรามาดูกันที่นี่เราก็อยากจะมาแฮกใช่ไหมครับอยากจะมาแฮกว่าเฮลท์เทคมันช่วยทำอะไรให้กับโลกใบนี้ได้บ้างนะครับเราได้สปอนเซอร์ใหญ่ๆนะครับในเองนะครับงานพัฒนาแห่งชาตินะครับแล้วก็เราเรียกว่า Academy of Engineering จากประเทศเลยนะครับเปรียบเทียบก็คือสถานวิศวกรรมแห่งประเทศเลยนะเขาสนใจที่จะมาดูไอเดียพวกคุณนะครับว่าพวกคุณเนี่ยมีความสามารถแล้วก็เชื่อว่าพวกคุณมีความสามารถที่จะคิดไอเดียเปลี่ยนโลกไปได้นะครับรวมถึงนวัตกรรมที่พวกคุณคิดขึ้นมาเนี่ยทาง NIA เนี่ยมาเป็นแนวมองนะครับเขาไม่ใช่อยากจะได้โปรเจกต์ที่พวกคุณพิชโลกแล้วก็การตั้งไปนะครับทุกคนมองถึงที่เนี่ยมีสิทธิ์ที่จะเป็นเจ้าของธุรกิจได้นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นตั้งใจให้เต็มที่นะฮะเดี๋ยวคณะดีกำลังจะมาครับผมที่จะผมรับว่าแขกรับเชิญมาถึงแล้ว
And of course, as you see, we have more and more participants who are registering now, and that's why it took so long. I mean, if you look at it, it's nice, so many people coming, and that's a good thing for us.
ผมไม่ทราบว่าทุกท่านจะรู้ไหมว่าเราเนี่ยสามารถรับได้สูงสุด100 ท่านแต่รู้ไหมครับว่ามีผู้ลงทะเบียนจริงๆกี่ท่านทะลุ200นะครับทะลุ100จริงๆนะครับนั่นก็เป็นความสามารถของท่านนะครับที่มีโอกาสได้อยู่ตรงนี้นะครับขอเรียนเชิญผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์นอกจากเด็กครับผมสมัยก่อนนะครับคณะดีของคณะสวัสดิ์ครับผม
So good evening, everyone. So welcome all makers. So Mahindra University is trying to push for, especially for policy for entrepreneurial university. And we, our faculty of engineering at Mahindra University, we already have facility. Actually, not just here. You can see that we have a building is about to be finished at the end of this year. And that also another part of facility that can provide for everyone. And it's not about for only Mahindra engineering students. In the future, all disciplines must be working together. So welcome everyone, and I hope that these 3 days that you will spend time together will be the best time for you and bring up your idea to be the real thing. And I hope you can actually really answer the solution to the real problem for our world. And welcome to our global tech challenge, especially for health tech. So welcome to Mahindra Engineering. Thank you for all support from NIA, also the UK Academy of the what is it called? Royal Academy of Engineering, and also thank you, Dr. Chai, here Thomas. Nice to meet you. So welcome all of you. Feel free to spend time and facility, and I hope all of you will be success at the end of this event. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ajahn and Jack, for your nice speech. Well, and now we would like to invite Ms. Monta Hiron, Innovation Counseling Manager from National Innovation Agency. Please welcome.
ที่จริงตอนแรกบอกว่าอยากเข้ามาเป็นภาษาอังกฤษแต่เพราะว่าจริงๆต้องบอกว่าแม่คนที่มาเรามุ่งมั่นเป็นสตาร์ทอัพนะคะจริงๆเรามีโจทย์แต่ว่าคนที่เป็นสตาร์ทอัพต้องทีมโกลบอลตั้งแต่เดย์วันก็เลยอันนี้บอกว่าถ้าเกิดการสิ่งที่ท้าทายนะคะว่าถ้าเกิดทีมไหนอังกฤษได้ก็อังกฤษเพราะว่าเดี๋ยวนี้ใช่ไหมคะโลกสื่อสารเราอยู่ตรงไหนรู้กันหมดเลยนะคะเพราะฉะนั้นจริงๆตรงนี้ก็เลยอยากให้ไว้ว่าที่ใครพูดภาษาอังกฤษได้นะคะก็ลองดูนะคะที่อาจจะพูดไม่ค่อยเก่งกันจริงๆก็เป็นลูกเป็นเด็กที่โดนเหมือนกันนะคะสอบคณะวิทย์นะคะแต่พอโตเป็นเด็กพอลิเมอร์สายนะคะจริงๆแต่ว่ามาที่นี่ตอนนั้นสมัยก่อนมาคุณแม่แล้วคุณแล้วน้องเด็กแพทย์เด็กพยาบาลที่แต่ก่อนมันเคยจับถ้าเป็นเด็กที่โดนนี่จะเคยทำนะคะเดี๋ยวนี้มีอยู่ไม่รู้อันโนนที่ทุกคนจะตื่นเต้นมากจะหาอันโนนเจอไหมแคทไอออนแอนไอออนอะไรอย่างนี้นะคะที่ตอนที่เดินอยู่แถวนี้จะเป็นแบบนี้นะคะก็จริงๆวันนี้ก็คือในงานของตัวสำนักงานองค์การชาตินะคะก็คือที่สั้นๆว่าสปช.หรือ NIA เนี่ยเราต้องการเห็นนะคะในการสร้างเอาไปพูดถึงให้กับทุกคนนะคะซึ่งจริงๆอันนี้เข้าใจว่าไม่ใช่เฉพาะมัธยมเนาะมีหลายที่ด้วยผู้งานบุคคลต่างๆเข้ามานะคะแล้วเรามีหน้าที่ในการที่ทำยังไงที่ช่วยส่งเสริมให้คุณเนี่ยสร้างเรียกระบบนิเวศนะคะเรามาทำงานร่วมกันของมัธยมของตัวจากตัวประเทศอังกฤษแล้วก็ของโดยเฉพาะกำลังสำคัญจากทุกท่านนะคะเพราะว่าเราทำคนเดียวไม่ได้วันนี้เราดีใจมากจริงเริ่มคุยกับดารามาพักหนึ่งแล้วบอกว่าเนี่ยเริ่มต้นตอนแรกเรามาหาไอเดียของไหนเพราะเฮลท์เทคใช่ไหมไม่แน่ใจใครเคยไปส่งคุณพ่อคุณแม่ไปเข้าโรงพยาบาลไหมคะก่อนที่คุณแม่ไปโรงพยาบาลจุฬาที่ต้องวนรถไปตี 5ใช่ไหมคะแล้วเสร็จแล้วก็ก่อนจะหาหมอประมาณ10 โมงแล้วหมอมี2 คนจะต้องเล่าประมาณ10 รอบอันนี้จากประสบการณ์แล้วพี่เข้าใจหรอกที่แต่สมัยก่อนแรกไม่รู้ไงแล้วหลังๆนะเรื่องมาคุณแม่ไปหลายคนเนี่ยจดเป็นโน้ตไปเลยเพราะว่าหมอจะถามมีอะไรเริ่มอะไรบ้างอะไรเงี้ยคุณกลัวเราในฐานะที่เราได้ข้อมูลเราก็กลัวว่าจะให้ข้อมูลไม่ถูกแล้วก็ทำไมไม่มีอะไรที่จะบอกได้เลยนะทำไมเราต้องมาจำด้วยอะไรเงี้ยเราก็กลัวว่าจะให้ข้อมูลหมอผิดอย่างเงี้ยที่เราถามแม่เราผิดอย่างเงี้ยค่ะเนี่ยอันนี้จริงมันก็จะเป็นส่วนที่เจอเลยเพราะนั้นจริงดูมันเป็นเรื่องง่ายๆนะแต่ถ้ามันมีอะไรตรงนี้นะคะที่จะช่วยขึ้นมาว่าให้เด็กหรือว่าบางทีเนี่ยล่าสุดที่ก็เพิ่งเศร้าน้องที่เป็นป่วยแล้วก็ค่อนข้างหนักมากแล้วคุณหมอก็ต้องให้ตัดสินใจว่าจะป้องกันหรือไม่ป้องกันดีเราก็ถามว่าในฐานะที่เปอร์เซ็นต์จะเป็นยังไงคุณหมอก็ไม่ก็บอกว่าดีข้อเสียนะคุณตัดสินใจก็เป็นเราแต่ถ้าเกิดมันมีอะไรที่มันข้อมูลทำไมไม่มีข้อมูลช่วยสังเกตว่าขนาดไหนถึงจะได้ขนาดนี้ได้อะไรอย่างเงี้ยพอดีก็มีแบบคือเข้าใจว่าแพทย์เนี่ยถ้าจะคุยกับแพทย์บอกแพทย์มันมีปัจจัยอะไรเยอะแต่ฉะนั้นเราจะมีอะไรแล้วเอาเดี๋ยวนี้เขามีอะไรคะ AI ไหมคะว่าต่างๆ AI ที่มันช่วยในการที่ช่วยใจยังไงบ้างเราลองบรรทัดตัวนี้มาใช้นะคะก็หวังว่าเดี๋ยวเราอยู่กันเนาะ2 คืนใช่ไหมคะ2 คืน 3 วันนิดๆนะคะเราก็คงแลกเปลี่ยนการเจอกันนะคะแล้วก็หวังว่าเราจะมีโซลูชันดีๆนะคะสำหรับเฮลท์เทคนะคะของประเทศไทยแล้วก็ของตัวโกลบอลนะคะโอเคค่ะขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you very much, Ms. Monta. Now we're going to have a panel discussion, and the theme is health tech as a global challenge for change. So let's invite Assistant Professor Dr. Jackie Sutherland, Dean of Faculty of Engineering at Wellington University. Please join the panel, sir. And then Ms. Monta Hiron, please. Innovation Counselor Manager at National Innovation Agency, and then Dr. Thomas Stewart, Faculty of Environmental Science and Resource Studies at Lingdong University, please. And Professor Dr. Patachai Thurastisin, Director of INT at Lingdong University, and Dr. Keita Ono, Engineer Director at Faculty of Engineering, please. With a warm
Once again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your participation in this panel discussion. We start quite a rare occasion that we can have everyone here on the same panel. So the reason is that we would like to discuss, what is the role of engineering in this unpredictable world. And since we are focusing in our university, especially focusing on healthcare technology, what is then the impact that should involve in this unpredictable world? So that's why we bring up the topic, and it is also supported by Royal Academy of Engineering in UK. Right. So in this case, may I begin with our dean, Professor Chakrit. What do you think because many places especially in academics and also industry, they are talking about the role of engineering for engineers in this unpredictable world. They tend to say that the work is not anymore predictable. Maybe you can share some words about this.
Okay. So actually, as one of the researchers, I'm also a researcher. For engineering researcher, we do things, we invent things. We can do a lot of things. And actually, for myself, I believe we can do everything. But the bad thing is what we did or what we try to do. This is really answer real problems. And nowadays, since we know that all the technology, all the way that world connect to each other, nowadays, even it's a small problem here in Thailand, it's possible that it actually can answer some big problem, maybe at the other corner of the world. Or the other way around, maybe some problem that actually impact really big picture, like globally. We here, a group of people here, may be able to answer or give a solution for that global problem. So I think engineering people or engineers can do things, but to make it better in terms of efficiency and also to direct to the real problem or point, we need to know and understand real problem. So for here, we are talking about health tech. So it is very good that you and the team organize this topic, because such as in our panel, we already have medical doctors sitting here. Okay, and actually we have our own infrastructure that we can connect and get the real feedback or real problem from the people in the healthcare side. So you can see that engineering meet with the medicine not enough. Still, even we both group of people talk to each other, we still need sort of the ecosystem and community. And another part very important, management idea, business idea, and some other things else like environmental things. Many things that we have to gather a group of people or knowledge to do things. And then, since we have only a number of people that stand up and willing to do, we can have the real solution for real problem in the right way. That's what I think.
Okay. And I would like to turn to Professor Katasha in this case. Since you are also medical doctors and lately you are involved a lot in innovation, technology transfer in this case, we still think that healthcare problem is actually changing or developing in a different variety of way all the time. So it means that in one way you can see that this is quite unpredictable problem. Well, as a medical doctor and also as an innovator, what do you see about this healthcare and unpredictable world?
Right. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to join this very privileged panel. So when I heard Dr. Keta mention about unpredictable world, so to try to think of the applicable to the healthcare. So for example, if I will give you an example of the infectious disease, it means that you infected with, for example, the germs, the bacteria. If Mr. A and Mrs. B infected with the same bacteria, can I give both of them the same medicine? They have the same disease, the same germs. Can I give them the same drugs? No. See? Even the same germs, same disease, same location of disease, we cannot give them the same drugs. This is an example of unpredictable. And we don't even know that which drug is suitable for which persons. This is an example of unpredictable because the germs is also the living organisms. So they change. We change, they change, right? So there is no definite solution for medicine to treat each patient. So this is an example of unpredictable things. So even we know that we can use this medicine to treat these patients, and we give them. Sometimes they don't respond to the medicine that we give them. So what happened? So they adjusted. Even we tested that we can use this medicine, and we use the right one for these patients. But during treatment, the germ, which is the living organism, can change themselves because they fight back with the medicine that we give to the patients. So everything is changing and ongoing all the time, and we have to monitor. And now in the medical world, we facing the problem that the germs can fight to all the drugs that we have, which means that we don't have any more drug to treat the patients. So what will happen? Do you think the doctors can find new drugs? No, the doctor don't know. Speaking as a doctor, I don't know how to find new drugs. You think this is a job of the pharmacist? No, they couldn't do. What is it? Because there are thousands of substances, thousands or millions of substances in the world that could be used to treat the patients, but we don't know where is it. Because there are tons of data that we have to study. So the doctors, the pharmacists themselves cannot do by their own. So we have to connect to other professionals like engineers, because engineers, they know how to analyze a lot of data and try to find some solutions. But engineers have to work to other professionals as well, so we can get the right solution for the patients. I think this is the example that I like to give you an idea that what is the unpredictable and what engineer can do to help with the health problems.
So you might be that, okay, it's unpredictable, we need to work retire. I think I would like to turn to Professor Thomas here. I heard that you have a strong background in medical device development when back in the US, and I think you have run your company for a couple of decades already. Maybe since
innovation things and get requirements and also understand the healthcare problems. What do you like to share about what happened during your
ตึกแดงด้านขวาตึกแดงเข้ามาข้างในเลยเข้ามาข้างในมันจะมีประตูอยู่นะเข้ามาดิ
I got my degree in
มาดิ
chemistry,
ข
but
วา
I
เลย
worked
ขวาอีก
in
เนี่ย
medical diagnostics
มาอีกฝั่ง
starting
มา
almost
อีกฝั่ง
35 years ago, and I've been doing diagnostic technology development for the last 30 years.
ได้เริ่มเข้ามาได้
And I
แล้ว
want to let you guys know that this is a great time to be an engineer. When I started in my career in the lab, we didn't have computers, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have a lot of cheap, good technology. And I've seen this technology development, and it's all dependent on engineers. And now there's so many problems to work on, so many interesting things to do. I wish I was your age again and starting over. I can do more science and more engineering in 1 year, or say in 1 month now than I could in 1 year 35 years ago. We can do things that much quicker. We're sharing information on the internet and we can find out things quickly. I'm holding in my hand a potentiostat that wasn't possible 35 years ago. This is for diabetic patients to quickly and cheaply measure the amount of glucose in their blood, and they take their medication based on the results of this potentiostat. And it costs $20 in the US to buy this potentiostat. And it's just amazing technology. I have been focusing on environmental diagnostics the last 20 years, and the medical industry spends $1 billion developing this $20 potentiostat. And then a small company like me can take this technology and I can adapt it to use it for environmental analysis to analyze soil and food and water. And this is something that when I started, a small company wouldn't have the access to this technology. So you guys can be clever, you can borrow technology from other industries, and you can do a lot more now than I could when I was your age. It's a great time to be an engineer.
Thank you. And we'd like to turn to this one trial right now. In terms of National Innovation Agency, you are taking care of, let's say, all the innovation and innovators. So, what do you see in this? I mean, why is NIA so active in the last 10 years? Like, you try to put a lot of money, for example, to get a sponsorship from you today. What do you see then? Why do we need this? Why do we need to be innovative right now?
Every person understand about innovation. This is innovation is a new thing for the create new value. So that I think is every environmental can make an innovation. That is if somebody know basic on the knowledge. I think the important thing that is knowledge. When you have the knowledge, you can change the knowledge to the money. That is an innovation. Okay, can change to money, can change to user, can change to the health any person. So that is an innovation. So that's for the NIA representative is a government agency. I have NIA have the create the innovator that say right you need a new gen, right? New gen is become to the health Thailand, to the create Thailand 4.0. That is this is a new S curve in the Thailand. For example, now is a new S curve for the health tech. Is one of the BCG model that is government is focus. So that is I think is every person maybe is a very important thing.
Right. Then in this futuristic with this predictable world, right? And then we also see that there are some trend of technologies like everyone is talking about AI, machine learning, precision medicine, everything, and try to customize solutions for everyone.
Right.
Well, why do we need that actually? I mean, why is it so urgently to utilize
So it's not about the trend and the people say. It's about the capacity of technology. Okay, two things. One, the processing is high enough and the cost is low enough. Second, the communication is reached to the point that actually we can communicate easily throughout the world. So these are the best two things in my opinion. So data, everyone have a lot of data that shared in the world right now. So if we have enough data and we have, actually AI is not new. It's a technology that already been a while, or in the world for a while. But now it's at a good environment enough that we can have enough number of data to do things right. And we can communicate easily. Everything can process quicker than before in the right cost. So the importance of all these things make the world change. And everyone now can access all the information through your smartphone, through internet. That is a very important event that happens in the world. So right now, and everyone have changed
พรุ่งนี้กี่โมง
lifestyle.
พรุ่งนี้กี่โมง
So in that case, you can choose what you like.
PC
You can be what you want.
เอา PC
And
เครื่อง
also,
PC
sometimes, especially
เครื่องนี้เครื่องเดิมเลยไม่เคยใช้
you can have specific things that like Dr. Patrasha just mentioned. You may have specific things that you need to be treated in specific way.
จันทร์
So AI
ลองเอากล้อง
is
หลัง
one of the solutions
ลองเอากล้อง
that
เดียวไป
can help make things change. But I could say that we come here today not just about AI. Okay, there are a lot of way of technology, but these are vital ones.
แล้วก็ลองอันนี้
Okay, so I would say this is the best idea. And actually, engineering or technology, there are a lot more technologies that actually can help, especially in this case, we talk about health tech. And also the thing around of these technology that we need to gather. But anyway, I like that the NIA mentioned. I also have been inventing many things. But can I turn to be real money? Money is one point, it's a good incentive back to you so you can go further. But actually real impact to the world, to the real user or the patients, that's really important. Okay, so I hope that could motivate you about the goal. So I mentioned about the word inventor instead of I say the word innovator because I'm aware the difference between these two. Okay, so we use a lot of word innovation, but it's not going to be real innovation until it's make a big impact or impact in the real use. So today may be a starting point for many of you guys, but I hope that push to the end. Okay, and like Thomas mentioned, nowadays a lot of things is available for you. You don't need to have like billion US dollar to have like perfect facility, right? So we can start from what we have right now. And it's just ideas. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you would like to encourage everyone here, even though we started a small step today, but we should aim very deep, right? Maybe one of your solution can help improve the healthcare globally, right? Actually, speaking of globally, someone told me that very soon our world population will be 10 billion people. So quite astonishing. Actually, I did my research on Wikipedia, and then we have about 7 billion people in this world right now. So, okay, yeah, right. Okay, we kind of critical. I mean, okay, the number sounds a lot, but as a medical doctor, when we hear this, that maybe soon, eventually, within 10 years, we should have over 10 billion people in this world with many problems. And we have also just mentioned about, okay, even though we have the same disease, same condition, same very similar person, but exactly the same medical treatment might not be able to apply to them. So what is the concern that you're seeing in the future?
So when we have more populations, so it doesn't matter that how many people live in the world. I think the most important thing is we need to live happily, right? We need to live healthy. So how we can do that? Because we still have a lot of natural resources, but if we are always ill, so that's not going to be happy. So the health tech means we try to keep people healthy and happy, right? For example, I already mentioned some of the infection to you. So just give you another example. If I ask you, you can answer if you mind. If I ask you that what is the worst infection that if you have it, you're gonna break the world, for example. So let me ask you in Thai so you can get my question. So ถ้าคุณติดเชื้ออะไรแล้วคุณรู้สึกว่าเป็นเรื่องเลวร้ายที่สุดสำหรับชีวิตคุณครับคิดในใจคุณคิดว่าถ้าคุณติดเชื้อตัวนี้คุณรู้สึกโลกจะระเบิด I believe that at least half of people in this room gonna answer AIDS, HIV, right? Yeah. And you know that people living in it can live, very, very, very long. And AIDS or HIV is very easy to manage. But you probably don't know that the worst one in the world right now is tuberculosis. In Thai is one low. This is the disease that kills more people than any of other diseases. But no one talks about it. No, it's number one killing disease. But no one knows and no one cares. Why? Because it's very slow in process and eventually you will die. And with HIV, you know how to protect it. But if one people in this room have tuberculosis and you cough out, another people will pick it so easy. Because it's airborne, right? But see, we tackle the wrong problem. Everyone tries to think of how to cure HIV. But we cannot cure tuberculosis. This is number one in the world. Why? See? So if we have 10 billion populations, and half of them have tuberculosis. So if you cough to another half, and everyone will get tuberculosis, right? So that's why if we concern of more population, we have concern about disease that can make people, deteriorate for their health, right? So I think it doesn't matter how many people we have, but I think we have to think about how to make people live healthy and happy. And try to tackle the right problems, tackle the one that affect the population of the world.
Thank you so much for. I think that after your comments, how you decided to tackle part. Yeah, that so we speaking of innovation and especially incubation center, etc. It seems to be, especially in Thailand, we look into a model, for example, from US or from Europe, right? That there is a way we should adopt and way to go to improve our many things in Thailand in terms of innovation. Maybe for Thomas, can you compare or give us an overview, okay, since you explained more, what is the difference between this and why we are not there yet?
I've been in Thailand for 2 years now. I had my own business in the U.S. for 25 years and worked for 5 years, for that 30 years in startup businesses in the U.S. And I found two things lacking in Thailand that make it difficult to start a new company and be innovative. And these are the things that I would recommend changing in Thailand. One, the U.S. has a culture and a system of entrepreneurship and innovation. We've been doing it and encouraging it for decades, 100 years. We have a system in place where every year new startup companies are forming and new startup companies are failing, because the fact is most startups run out of money before they can succeed in their product. And because of this system and the amount of startup companies we have, when I started my own company, I didn't have to buy new equipment. I bought the used equipment from a startup company that had failed. It is very easy to financially start your own lab in the US because you can buy equipment so cheap. But in Thailand, we don't have any failing companies because this is the first time this generation is trying to do it. So it is very expensive. Even me as an experienced businessman, I don't have the resources to buy the new equipment to start a new lab. So one difficulty in Thailand is getting cheap equipment to do your work. You got to get that system, follow that U.S. system of sharing equipment and passing it on. It requires a lot of investment for the first generation of innovators to get that new equipment, and then you got to get that system of passing used equipment on to other companies. That's one thing. The other thing is the availability of chemicals. I don't care if you're an engineer, you still need to put things on these to detect a virus or bacteria. You got to put chemicals on your technology. And I need, in the US, if I need something, I can place an order this afternoon and get it overnight tomorrow morning. I'm ready to use it. And in Thailand, I have to wait 30 days, sometimes 45 days to get a chemical. And let's say I want to do an experiment. I plan an experiment. I need 10 chemicals. And I order those 10 chemicals. Some of them come in 1 week. The longest one takes a month. I wait a month to do an experiment. I try that experiment. It takes me a half a day to do the experiment. And I realized it didn't work well, but it would work better if I had a different chemical. So now I got to order one more chemical. I got to wait 30 more days to do my second experiment. It's been 60 days. I've done 2 experiments. In the US, you try it, you order today, you get it tomorrow, and try something. If it doesn't work, you make another order. Every day you're doing something new. It makes the progress that I'm spending less time and less money doing my innovations. You're finding out answers. Even if you're getting the wrong answers, you're finding out quicker and cheaper in the US than in Thailand. So I would say we need a system of suppliers for entrepreneurs and innovative technology. So it's not a 30-day waiting for things.
But it's also very difficult, actually. If we craft, if we begin at our lab, for example, and say, okay, we want to have some experiments, then we should have a better supplier system. And then supplier system come from all countries, and then where exactly should we begin then? I mean, in order to build a sustainable ecosystem.
Small businessman doesn't have the money and the influence to change the system. We got to get the government or the large companies to change the system. And we've got to realize the importance of doing this, and we got to make a change. I think the government has to start, or the investors.
I would like to come to the idea right now because everyone is trying to say that building an ecosystem must begin with government. So, what can you offer us?
No. I think for the ecosystem not built only government. I think it's every person must help to build up the strong ecosystem because it's for some my experience. I go to the Israel, something like that. I see how the private company have built up to the incubation and accelerator program. And ask why you have the benefits from this? Because not only in the Thailand, incubation mostly in the university, right? Because this have the granting from the government. But for in the country, mostly from the private company. So maybe I think this for the new startup, I think you have the many big market. For example, for the health tech, you have the people in the Thailand, people in the world. So that is a big market, and you have the knowledge. I think knowledge is fundamental. Is so many. Okay, you maybe in the university, in the secondary primary school, you study about the, for example, deep This is a T-layer, something like that. This is, I think, foundation for the knowledge. When you have the knowledge, you can find the pain point, and when you find the good pain point and find the new market and new solution for this, you can the winner. For example, you is something now every person know about the Facebook. In the first time, Facebook is look like, I'm not sure you is when I young is called how to say paper when the paper sent to some person to like how to say it's I'm not sure that now is in the new. For me, the last time when I finished the Scatway, I have the one book and give to my friend to give something like that. And now in first book is into this. After that, he can connect all over the world and have to make the big market, big business. So that same in the health, I think health is important because every person is a health. And for me, for example, for me now is that I have maybe go to the order. And when you go to the order, I need to something to help. I think this is you can find many pain points and find the solution. And important thing, I think when you find that, I think in the Thailand have the problem. Something is when to the researcher. When the researcher find the problem, he want to only the academic paper. When the academic paper, sometimes cost may be very high. When in the real business cannot done things like this. So that need the person to not bring this research and bring something to apply to the business. Because it's important thing, I think knowledge have so many you can select. AI, blockchain, many things on quantum, something like that so high. Okay, you can bring in the technology and so that important thing, you must find the good solution for the good people. This is important.
Thank you so much. Well, as a team of organizers, maybe the panel has been informed that we actually have over 200 people who are interested to join this event. But we have already said just about 100. So everyone is so energetic and keep calling me. I mean, right? Actually, before I got understand, still I have a chance to come. So everyone is quite energetic to come here. Maybe you can leave a few last comments so that we can, we can get great hackathon here. Like maybe we can do professor.
Okay, so just from my experience, okay, so you guys at the right time, okay, you have the technology, people call it disruptive, I see that is an opportunity, okay, and you have, I think you are at the right moment that what Thomas mentioned has happened, and possible still here some certain things like for chemical, I'm not sure about that, not in this field. I come from the field of medical robotics. 12 years ago, or actually a little bit more than that, let's say almost 15 years ago, we have nothing, okay? Nothing means that not just only for me, but for the ecosystem, okay? And then myself with friends from different universities, start a small society called Thai Robotic Society. And then we organize a robot competition. And then we have 100 teams join the rescue robot competition. So now we can access actuators, we can get the motors, we can get sensors. So the environment is changed. So everyone, if we can gather together and try to have the demand, supply will come, like NA mentioned about that. So it's not about just only NA, but it's about community. So please come and join. And from my experience, one more thing, I didn't say much, but about 40, 50 years ago, I got involved with one company in Thailand. Okay, actually at the beginning it's not company yet. It's just an idea for one guy, Thai people to study about myself. And then we start from the pain point that he mentioned that the solution could impact the world. Okay, and then we start a small company together. Finally, and we've been through a lot of things. Okay, there is no at the time NIA just set up not very long. Okay, and then finally our product has been selected to be in the CNN headline news. And finally, our company is actually not in Thailand, but it's in the US. And sell it globally except in Thailand. But that happened 50 years ago. But nowadays, I know by myself that actually in Thailand is much more ready than before. Okay, and all the R&Ds, all the supplies, today is different from 50 years ago. At that time, really, even some certain specific component, we got to fly somewhere else to get it. Not just only order, some they don't sell outside the country. Seriously. So today is a good time. Okay, by the way, I have not involved in that company anymore. Okay? Because I choose my way, my path is to become professor here, working here. I'm happy with it. I'm not that rich like that time. It's okay. But you guys, this is an opportunity for you guys. Okay? You can reach to the point easier than 50 years ago. And together, you getting to know each other. Networking is very important. I learned now, know how is okay, but know who is more important. Okay? So good luck, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so before you start your project for the next 3 days, so today I have 2 roles for myself. One is a medical doctor, so it means that I'm a user of the technologies, just using it. Another role is managing the innovation and technology at my university. So I'm just delivering the technologies. So you can see that I'm not the builders, I'm not the maker of the technologies, but you are. So the next 3 days, you're going to be the makers of the technologies that, as a user, I'm ready to use them. As the managers, would like to deliver your technologies to the world. So the hope is all yours. So I just give you 2 keywords before you start your projects. First is make it simple. So you don't have to think about too complicated and no one knows, no one understands. Make it simple. And second, make it practical. Because if you make it so fancy, it's going to be a long way and probably it's not going to go to the end. So try to make it simple and practical so everyone can hit to the right problems, as I mentioned earlier. So this is going to make your innovations, works and can be real in the world for people to use. So that's my final words.
Professor Thomas. Right, okay, you're right. Because after there will be another talk. So this very late, okay?
Okay. I think normally in I have the mechanism is a 3G, not 5G, 3G. 3G only one is a groom. Groom, okay, say like this, I want to build up the entrepreneurship, build up some person to networking, something like that, to make the new business. This is a groom. After that, you eat the idea and can make the business. Okay, you have the idea, create something like that for the innovation. NIA have the grant. It's a grant now is 1.5 million baht per project. Okay, per one company. And normally is for the grant. I think is a grant if you is the starter. Okay, or not suitable for the NIA. I'm not sure is have the company. Okay, for pitch with the my committee because the committee very hard. Because my community is can see the more than project and so see many points. But I think if you not start, you have another organization can help you. For example, is a TED fund. You know TED fund from the okay. Now change to the most this Mahesi. It's now Ministry of Science and we change to Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation. Okay, I'm not sure if somebody said this Mahesi. Oh yeah, this is have the TED fund. You can get something. Or the another organization, for example, NASA. NASA have the ITAP. Okay. In the first you need ITAP have the. If you need the research, a consult will tell you. This have the 400,000 baht for help you. And if you have the digital, this have the department for help you. So that if you in the important thing, you must find the new solution, new QA for the new business. And in the TG, it's a code when you have business out, okay, for the how to build up the code, how to build up to the build to the all the country, how to build to the region, how to build to the global. That is okay. I can start the VC, okay, how to bring you to the accelerator to the another country. This is TG. Okay, I think this can help you when you have the good idea. So that in my is a concern. That is when you thinking I have the normally in the social innovation have the okay when the social have the TP for the concern. I think can use to every business. In the first is a profit. Every person is not some that is some for example research is very good but for the profit. How to the bring the money to the company is a can be sustainable because something like that is a CSR something like that is not so good for the business. But you have the model that is how to profit. The second P is the people. When you know when you run the business, okay, people when to do under with you. Okay, what is the group in the under with you? And the third planet. Mobile is if you made a new thing, must have this something that you must not have the problem for the another. This is a TP, but you concern when you think about the new innovation.
Thank you so much for the time for this panel. Well, I think everyone will get some interesting points for you to work on in the next 3 days. Right. And I would like to thank you, Professor Chakrit Suthankor, the Dean of Technology and Engineering at the University, also Professor Katalachai, the Director of TINC, and Professor Thomas from the Faculty of Environmental and Resources Studies, and also Ms. Monta from the Agency and National Innovation Agency for your time today and also for your sharing with us today. Right. And thank you so much. Right. And then may I invite Professor Chakrit to present as a gift to our panel here. I mean, as a host. Right. First, I would like to invite Professor Katalachai.
So
next, Professor Thomas Stewart. The last one is Montra from NIH. Thank you so much for your time. A group photo.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing ideas. It was a nice panel discussion. Now, it's time for 8 Simple Rules for Starting a Business by Dr. Thomas Stewart. Let's listen and learn more.
Hello. Good evening. I'd like to thank the Faculty of Engineering for inviting me to talk tonight. My name is Tom Stewart, and I'm going to talk about some advice on lessons I learned starting a business 25 years ago. How many people in this room have an idea for a product and would like to start a business? Raise your hand if you're currently interested in starting a business now. Okay, that's a good amount. Those of you that don't have an idea right now, that's okay, because when I was in college, I didn't have any business ideas either. I had no desire to start my own business. But when I was 35 years old, the opportunity came, I had the experience to do it, and I started my own company and ran my business for 25 years and learned a lot of lessons about how to start a company. I learned how to maybe 20 basic rules that made me succeed for 25 years. I can't go over all 20 of them now. I'll just do a few basic ones tonight. So even if you're not interested in a company now, you might be interested in a company later. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I mentioned in the panel discussion about the system of startups in the U.S. And I went to school at the University of North Carolina here at UNC. It's a major research university. There are two other universities, major research universities close by, Duke University and North Carolina State University. I got a PhD in biological chemistry at UNC and did a postdoc at Duke University. And between these three universities are very close together. And in the middle of it, the state government set up a research triangle park. And it attracted a lot of major companies. I have some of them listed here, like IBM and Glaxo Wellcome, a drug company, agricultural companies. The Environmental Protection Agency offices are located in the Research Triangle Park. I actually did a postdoc with Becton Dickinson, this company here. That's where I learned to make medical diagnostics with Becton Dickinson. And this park also had hundreds of small startups. The purpose of this park was to be an incubator center for small startup companies. After I got out of college, I did 2 postdocs, and then I spent the rest of my career in Research Triangle Park. I worked for a startup company for 5 years, learning how to make medical diagnostics. And then that company ran out of money, went out of business, which most startup companies will do. And at that point, I had the training, the background, and the business idea to start my own company. I learned from the mistakes of the company I worked for. I didn't do those same mistakes. And for the next 25 years, I worked in the Research Triangle. I saw hundreds of startup companies every year. New companies would come in and start an idea, and after 5 years, run out of money and go out of business. It was just continuous. And I work with these companies, I talk with these companies, I see them making a lot of the same mistakes, and I like to share my experience with young people not to make these mistakes, be smarter and faster in getting your business going. So I started my company, Mercury Science, in 1995, making monoclonal antibodies that are used in medical diagnostics. I actually used mine for environmental analysis. So I made test kits for both medical use and environmental use. So what kind of experience do I have? What authority do I have to tell you about startup business? I have 30 years of thinking, planning, and working on innovative ideas. 25 of those years was running my own business. Consulted and collaborated with dozens of startups over that time. So let's start with the first rule. I'm going to talk about 8 basic rules for starting your company. Rule number 1, have a good idea. In my background, when I was your age, I didn't have a good idea. But what I recommend for people is to get an advanced degree. So I recommend that you get a good education, a master's, a PhD, or an MBA. This is a chance for you to learn more. You can get scholarships, so you're paid for the learning. You get more experience. And when you get out of school with an advanced degree, it gives you more authority when you go into a meeting and you suggest an idea. After I got out of school, I worked for a company for 5 years. And I had 2 bosses that were mentors for me. They were about my age now. They were close to retirement, and they had done startup businesses. And for 5 years, they told me what I needed to do, when I needed to do it, how I needed to do it. And I learned from these 2 mentors. One taught me the science side, one taught me the business side of startup companies. I recommend that all of you find somebody like me and work for them for 5 years. You get paid for 5 years, and you're getting free training for it. Know a lot about your idea, do a lot of research, or have a lot of experience on it. And if you work on it often enough and long enough, you're going to come up with a new way to do something that hasn't been done before. Rule number 2, enjoy what you do. Starting a company is very fun and exciting. You're working on something different every day. There's challenges every day. You're talking to new people every day. You have problems, you change company direction. You're never bored in a startup company. You're working on things that no one had ever worked on before, and you're using your brain to solve problems that no one's ever had to solve before. So it's important that what you're doing is that you like doing it, because you're going to spend a lot of your time doing it. I say when you first start your company, you might not have a lot of money, but you do have a lot of time. So you learn to do a lot of things on your own instead of paying other people to do them. So I recommend by controlling using your own time to control what you're doing in your company. You're going to have creative control of your product development. You're going to make better decisions because you understand the problems better. You're going to be able to work more efficiently. I recommend you enjoy it, but you only spend 40 hours. The goal is to only work 40 hours a week on your startup company. Most people work more than that in the beginning, but you want to try to reduce those hours. You might have to work till midnight one day because you get an order for a product. I'm the president of my company, but if I get an order for my product, I'm the one that stays late till midnight, packing the kits and getting them ready to ship. You put in the long hours. You might have to work on an experiment on Saturday or Sunday. You're away from your family. That's okay. You try to make up for that by sometimes during the work week. If it's a pleasant day, you go out and take some time off and spend time with your friends or something. Don't put so much stress and time in your company that you're miserable. You should be enjoying this. I said do things yourself that saves you money and it gains you experience. Always try to stay positive and happy when you're doing a startup company. Relationships are very important for startup companies. Be nice and helpful to everyone you meet, and meet a lot of people. build relationships. One way I saved money, you guys can benefit from this advice, is that I shared lab space with a friend. He started his business. We had worked together for 5 years when that startup company went out of business. He started his company, I started my company. We shared equipment and lab space for 25 years. When he'd get a contract and a project, I would help him on his work. When I would get a contract or project, he would help me. And we saved costs on rent and chemicals and labor by doing it that way. So you guys should probably get like 4 or 5 small startup companies sharing one lab space. Build some friendships there. Rule number 3, don't waste time. Most startups fail because they're too slow. They don't have experience. You run out of money because you're spending too much time and you have to pay rent and all these things. These bills come every month. So you want to start with one successful product. Don't try to have 10 products your first year of your business. Just do one. For example, I give Coke. Coke, one of the most successful drinks in the world. When they started their company, they had one drink, Coke. They didn't have Diet Coke and Sprite and all the other variations. They just did one thing well. When Ford started building cars, they had one car model. They didn't try to sell 20 car models, develop 20 car models. When McDonald's started, you could buy one hamburger with cheese or without. One size hamburger, one size fries, one size drink. That was your choices. Then as they got successful, they expanded their menu. So just try to start selling your first product as quick as possible. You want to make it simple and easy to develop. First product should be easy and simple. 90% of product development is easy. Write down what it's going to look like. Draw a picture. What parts go into your product? What parts do you need? Assemble those things. It's very quick and easy. The hard part is the new technology, the innovation. That's the last 10% is going to be the hardest. So don't waste time on the easy parts. Make simple decisions quickly. What is going to be the name of your company? What is going to be the logo of your company? That's kind of the fun things when I remember when I started my business, when I was at home after work, I said, what am I going to name my company? What's my logo going to be like? But don't spend a lot of time and money on your name and your logo. Don't wait for perfection. As soon as your product is good enough, you can sell it at a lower cost and then work on perfection later. I'll draw on that in another way. Okay, rule number 4, start small. The example is the space program. You don't want to send a man to the moon on your first mission. You just want to build a rocket that can get into space. So this should be quicker and easier to make. After you succeed, you can prove to me that you're a good entrepreneur by making a simple product first, and then you can expand it later. As examples, I use the iPhone. So if the iPhone 1 was the first generation iPhone was so good, why do we have iPhone 11 coming out now? Because iPhone 1 was not perfect, but it was good enough to sell. So what you do is you start selling your first generation product, and the revenue you get from this first product, you can improve your next generations. Microsoft Windows is another example. They had a crummy operating system, their first system 30 years ago, but it's the only one available, and it worked. Kind of worked. They kept on improving it. So the first Windows, if the first Windows was perfect, we wouldn't have the current Windows version right now. So they kept improving over the years. You should too. Have planned, in case your idea fails, try to have 2 or 3 plans. That way, if you have 4 ideas and 3 of them fail, you've got 1 success. If you only try 1 idea and it fails, that's it. You've lost. So I like to have a company have 3, and I do this for graduate. I recommend this for graduate students also when they start a thesis. They're starting a proposal. Try to have an easy goal, a medium difficulty goal, and a hard goal. If you only try to do something hard in grad school, you're going to risk failure. You have nothing to write your thesis on. But if you have 3 goals, you get practice doing the easy one and confidence, and then you go on to the medium difficulty, and then you tackle the hard one last. Here's an example from my company. So I took medical technology and I adapted it to environmental analysis. So my first generation products were made for use in the lab, and it was very well established technology. It was cheap. It was not very innovative, but I could take it and adapt it to use for environmental analysis very quickly and cheaply. I start selling those and I'm generating revenue, and then I go to my second generation idea. About this time, home pregnancy tests were becoming popular, where you have a little white paper and you put your sample on it. If you have a blue bar, you're pregnant. If you have a white bar, you're not pregnant. And I took that technology and I applied it to environmental analysis. And this was a test for mercury in soil. You would put a soil extract on your pad and wash it and add a substrate. If you had mercury binding chemicals on the pad in the shape of the letter Hg. If you saw a blue Hg, your soil had mercury in it. If you didn't see any letters, your soil did not have mercury in it. It's like a simple home pregnancy test for mercury. And then the last 5 years, I was working on my 3rd generation technology. It's not developed yet. I'd like to develop it in Thailand. So if any of you guys are interested, it has to do with the potentiostat that I showed you earlier. So this potentiostat has single-use electrodes. Inside this bottle is an electrode. You put a drop of blood on it, and the potentiostat will measure the glucose in it. So I was able to, with the help of engineers, by the way, I couldn't do this. I was able to build a modified potentiostat. And these are my sensors. I put antibodies to environmental chemicals there, and I can put an environmental sample on that sensor and quantitate a toxin in a food extract or soil extract. So this is the working prototype right here. What I'm trying to do in Thailand is find an engineer and company that can manufacture potentiostats, something like this. Rule number 5, you can't do it on your own. When I worked for a company for 5 years, I got a lot of friends with a lot of skills that ran companies, small startup companies. Like, I didn't know how to do the accounting. How do I pay my employees? How do I pay my taxes? I didn't know, as a scientist, I didn't know how to do that, but my friend did it for the company, and she helped my business do my finances. The lawyer for the company is my friend. He helps me handle the legal stuff for my startup companies. The suppliers for the company I work for, I was friends with them. So when I started my business, they knew me and they gave me a discount rates and they were friendly helping me. So try to establish connections with people that can help you do all the aspects of starting a business. If anybody wants to talk with me later about this, I'll be glad to talk anytime anybody wants advice on starting a business. I hope I talk with you guys more later. It's always helpful to be nice and helpful. You get a lot more done when people like you, and it helps your company a lot. Okay, so you guys are in a competition. You're going to be pitching these ideas. You're going to try to make it simple, quick, easy. Rule number 6. So there's 2 parts of business, of startup companies. One part is the technology and the science, getting it to work. The other part is the money to buy the things you need to run the business. So you're going to have to pitch your idea later this weekend. So the simple rule is to have a good story. Let's see. So when you're talking, the first thing you want to do is tell them what you're going to do. Then tell them how you're going to do it. Don't start by saying the background information. Just say what your product's going to do and why it's great. So for me, I've got this is a test kit to detect poison in shellfish. So what does it do? This kit saves lives. It also saves time and money, but the big thing is that it saves lives. So you show your product and say what the benefit is to the customer. After you tell them what it does, then you tell them how it does it and how much it costs and the details like that. The other part of your pitching is to be able to answer every question about your business. Have a plan. Have answers for any questions that investors might ask you. Who is going to do what in your company? Oh, this is called a Gantt chart. Have you guys done Gantt charts before? If you're going to be in business, you got to write reasonable Gantt charts. You have to stick to these timelines. Certain things have to be done in a certain time. Who's going to do it? What are they going to do? Where are they going to do it? How? Who are the critical personnel in your company? Who's going to manufacture your product? Who's going to sell you the chemicals that you need to make your reagents? Who's going to do your shipping, finance, sales? All of these things. It gets easier after you've done it for 30 years to have all these answers, but you guys got this weekend to try to think of some ideas on how you're going to do your company. Oh, here's an example from my sales pitch for my company in Thailand. So I located a really smart engineer in the engineering faculty at Mahidol. He's helping me make my potentiostats, and a couple other scientists at Mahidol. So I've got a team, a good qualified team to develop my products. I've been part of getting a new product approved is validating it and getting regulatory approval for it. You need connections for that. So I have some collaborations to help me when I get my potentiostat developed. I have a business plan on what my company's going to do. I'm not going to focus on making money on one idea. I'm going to have 4 ideas that I did in the United States. It's the way I was profitable for 25 years. It's my system. I'm experienced at it. I'm doing what I'm experienced at. I know it works. I know what my market and customers are. It's easier for me because I have past experience. But you guys think about who you're going to be selling your products to. Know what your strengths are. What are you good at? What's your product good for? Why should somebody give you money? Know your weaknesses. Why would people not want to give you money? And have a solution for how you're going to solve that weakness, how you're going to improve it. This is, I hate this subject, market size, because for 30 years, to get the money from investors, you have to promise $1 million. And for 30 years, I watched hundreds of startups promise millions of dollars to investors and fail to deliver. But it's the system, you have to tell them. I didn't do it that way. I didn't get a lot of investor money either because I was kind of honest about my market size. But what I recommend, I survived, and the startup companies that got millions of dollars did not survive. What I recommend if you want a 25-year business is be flexible. So you have to have a variety of, I had a variety of sources of revenue, doing contract research or consulting or test kit sales. And the amount that I would get from year to year would vary. Some years consulting would be good, some years contract research would be good. What do I want to say? I wasn't dependent on one area of revenue. So you should try to have a business where you can have multiple sources of revenue and be flexible so that if sales are low, you're still profitable. If sales are high, then you get rich. Rule number 8, learn new skills while you're doing this. You guys are young. I would recommend you be 35 years old when you start. But the world has changed in 35 years. You guys can do things like create a website in one day that didn't even exist when I started my business. I didn't have a website back then. So you guys have the internet to learn new things, and you're young. Even if you fail, the odds are against all of us in this room that we're not going to have a company, same company for 25 years. I was a dinosaur in North Carolina because I was the oldest living startup business in the Triangle. You guys that's another reason you should have fun. You're probably going to fail. But what you should do is you should learn new skills while you're doing this. Try to be an expert in what you started out, but also try to learn every other aspect that you can of business. What you're going to do, and also you're going to be nice and make connections. At the end of this experience, if your company fails, you're going to have a great CV, you're going to have friends, and you're going to get you have experience and success. No matter how, even if you lose money, you can still succeed in developing a prototype product, for example. There's other ways you can succeed and still not make money. And you're going to take those successes and you're going to sell them to the next company that you work for. In North Carolina, some people would work for 5 or 6 different startup companies, and they would keep gaining skills, and it's easier to get a job. They would work, like I worked 5 years, it failed. I could have jumped to another company, another startup company, and tried again. People keep trying until they get rich. It can be stressful to some people because your income is uncertain. Sometimes you don't have any money, sometimes you have a lot of money. But it's exciting. I enjoyed it. I was successful at it, and I recommend everybody, if you do want to try, but find a mentor to help you. That's all thoughts I have to say. Like I said, we could talk a lot more about this. I have 30 years of stories to tell you. If you tell me your individual plan, I can tell you probably all of the 100 countries I know has a plan.
หรือไม่ได้เปิดตั้งแต่แรก
Any questions?
ไม่ได้เปิดตั้งแต่แรกหรือไม่ดี
Some of the facts. It's a tiny lab in North Carolina. It's only 70 square meters. It's less than this room here. But we had a reputation after 25 years, and when the government, we had some deaths in Alaska with toxic shellfish, and it wasn't a quick, simple, cheap test. And the government gave me contracts to develop a bioscience kit for it. Any questions? Yeah. Talk to you later. Thank you.
Well, here you heard the idea that stewards want to get business. So you should be very careful for sharing what the idea is. And tomorrow you want to start now it's time for dinner, and then we get back to our introduction on Hackathon and the brand challenge. Enjoy yourself, have fun and show at this course. Feel free to connect, learn, and enjoy. ที่ทานข้าวนะคะเดินออกไปทางเซเว่นข้ามถนนไปจะอยู่ตึกหนึ่งอยู่ชั้นหนึ่งนะคะของอาคารหนึ่งใครไปไม่ถูกไหมเด็กวิศวะพาเพื่อนๆไปแล้วกันเนาะที่มาจากข้างนอกโรงอาหารของเราอะค่ะทานข้าวเสร็จแล้วกลับมาที่นี่นะอย่าเพิ่งกลับบ้านกลับมาเจอกันที่นี่ก่อน
สวิตช์ไม่ได้อีกแล้ว
อะไรนะ
สวิตช์ตอนท้ายไม่ได้อีกแล้วนี่ไง
ไม่ได้เหมือนกันกดอย่างนี้ก็ได้
ทานข้าว1 ชั่วโมงประมาณสักทุ่มหนึ่งก็ได้นะคะ1 ทุ่ม
แล้วเสียงเนี่ยมีมันขึ้นเลยนะ
1 ทุ่มมาเจอกันที่นี่นะคะ
เดสก์ท็อปใช่ไหม
นี่คือเครื่องโน้ตบุ๊กเสียงมันไม่เข้าใช่ไหมเดี๋ยวก่อนเสียงจากไหน
เสียงมันมานะอาจารย์เนี่ยเสียงมา
เดี๋ยวนะ
แต่มันเหมือนตอนแรกมันมีแล้วอยู่ดีก็หายตอนแรกเห็นมันขึ้นอยู่
เดี๋ยวนี้เดสก์ท็อป ถึงว่าไงอ่ะ